Hello, well today we're going to look at some of the local history of the east of Edinburgh, being Craigentinny. Now in the 16th century, Craigentinny was a vast estate, and at some point during this time they constructed Craigentinny Castle. It's not actually clear who built the castle, however in 1604 the Logans of Wrestlebrig sold the castle to James Nisbet in order to clear some debts. James Nisbet was the son of Henry Nisbet, who was a former provost of Edinburgh, and the castle was later passed to James's grandson, Sir Patrick Nisbet, and it remained within the Nisbet family for the next 90 years. In 1762, the castle was sold on by the last Nisbet, John Scott Nisbet, to William Miller, and Miller was a seed merchant from Edinburgh. He used some of the money left over from his father, also William Miller, who had purchased the Philyside land, and he used this leftover money to purchase the castle. Now, by the 19th century, the castle had passed to Miller's grandson, William Henry Miller, and he was a book collector and actually an MP for Newcastle-under-Lyme, and he pretty much spent most of his life in England. He was said to have been an eccentric character, and he was a bachelor when he died in 1848. The castle then passed to his relative Samuel Christie Miller, who over the coming years remodelled and built additions to the castles, including stables and a coach house. This was designed by the architect David Rind. Now David Rind was also the architect for the final resting place of William Miller, the Craigentinny Marbles, which is essentially a mausoleum. Now Miller was buried 40 feet underground, or 12 metres, and of course the mausoleum was built on top, and this was during the period of the great grave robbers who were digging up graves and selling over the bodies to the medical profession. Clearly all precautions had been taken by Miller prior to his death, including the stipulation that the coffin was lead lined and encased in concrete before being buried that 40 feet down. Another stipulation was that the mausoleum should be out with the city, and of course at that time it was indeed, and the Craigentinny land and surrounding land was that, there was nothing else there. So at the time it was built, the mausoleum cost £20,000, which in today's money would be 2.3 million, but that was nothing compared to the 300,000 fortune that Miller had amassed over his lifetime, which also equates to around 36 million in today's money. So the marble panels that you can see on either side of the mausoleum depict on one side the overthrowing of the Pharaoh in the Red Sea, and on the other the Song of Moses and Miriam. So today you can find the mausoleum, or Craigentinny Marbles, in Craigentinny Crescent in Edinburgh. And a lot of people do have the misfortune of assuming that this was built within the middle of a housing estate, but of course it was the other way around, and indeed the housing estate were built round the Craigentinny Marbles. So what of Craigentinny Castle, you wonder? Well, it was later bought by the City Corporation, and in 1937 it was converted into a community centre, and during this decade housing began to spring up around the Craigentinny land. In 1942 the east end of the castle was actually destroyed by 2 German bombs during the Second World War, and there was also further damage sustained to the building at that time. In 1978, a nasty looking white extension was added to the castle, which unfortunately now slightly diminishes the overall look of the building. Today it remains a community centre for the people of Edinburgh, who I'm sure perhaps don't quite realise the history that surrounds the Craigentinny Castle. So I hope you found that piece of Edinburgh hidden history interesting, and we'll see you on the next exploration.